Abuse. 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 Redemption for each other, but fate knows no bounds even if souls align. What happens? After all, birds in cages cannot fly out of the four corners of the sky. The daughter of a pampered prime minister, a great general dressed in military attire, she went deep into the harem. He stationed himself on the battlefield. We have known each other since childhood, but fate has never meant it. Among people, there are dragons and phoenixes, but they are unable to do so due to the mismatch between yin and yang. A paper kite, a vow. Looking back, tears welled up in my eyes. Shaking and swaying, the palace attire is dazzling. One sword seals the throat, the armor shines brightly. A silver hairpin seals the years, the moonlight is bright, and a lonely boat stands quietly on the shore. Blood like smoke, a dying warbler crowing. Chapter 1. Gui. C. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The night is as cool as water, and all things return to silence. The beauty on the red sandalwood couch gently shook her feather fan, her vermilion lips slightly parted and her eyes half narrowed. Outside the Lament hall, a palace maid lowered her head and walked quickly into the hall. The beautiful woman noticed that the maid's expression was not right, so she lightly raised her jade hand and said, "This palace is tired. Except for Ryu, you should all retreat." Ryu leaned on the ground, frowning slightly and saying, "Madam, I have seen clearly. Today, Yu Chang." "No, it is General Yu." The collapsed beauty lost her senses and her feather fan fell to the ground. "But what you saw with your own eyes." "It's okay. What does he have to do with our palace now? It's okay, it's okay. Our palace is hosting a flower welcoming banquet tomorrow, so go down and prepare." Ryu picked up the fallen feather fan and slowly retreated. The beauty closed the palace door and extinguished the candle. The moonlight shone through the window, and she stumbled and sat in front of the dressing table, with a silver white plain hairpin in the gilded makeup box. She held a simple hairpin and said with a smirk, "Long boat, in. Long boat. What is love? What is fate? Everything is destined by fate, so what's the reason for dividing, and combining, sigh, sigh. What's your name? How do you work?" "My humble name. Yu Changsheng." It wasn't intentional. The nearby shop owner rushed over and saw the little girl in a brocade silk dress staring at Yu Changsheng, who was at a loss. Without saying a word, he kicked him. "Little rascal who killed the heavens, how did you do your job? You dirted this young lady's clothes and I asked you to take your life to accompany me." The little girl who was just being arrogant and asking a question softened her voice when she saw the boy huddled aside and said, "Well, it's okay. I finally slipped out of the mansion to have a cup of tea, but you dirty my clothes with this little rascal. Seeing you like this, I can't ask you to compensate me again. My lord doesn't care about the trouble, so I won't argue with you. Boss, don't blame him anymore. Ollie, let's hurry back to the mansion." After speaking, he took out a few ingots of silver from his sleeve and placed them on the table. "Boss, I think this kid is still young. Don't beat or scold him like that. Use these silver coins to treat him." The boss bowed repeatedly, and the two little girls quickly walked out of the restaurant. Yu Changming stood up, wiped away the blood from the corners of his mouth, and looked at the figure slowly disappearing into the crowd. Guanghua Street. I saw the gate in front of the bustling mansion tightly closed. The vermilion gate with 5 estimated locations is covered with a ridge of glazed tiles. The Chilan lion beast, carved from white jade and Han stone at the entrance, stands on one left and one right. The high walls on both sides follow the terrain and surround it all the way down, making it impossible to see the edges. The 3 big characters, Prime Minister's Mansion, on the lintel are black with gold paint, exuding a majestic aura. The gatekeeper saw the hastily returning master and servant and quickly pushed open the west corner door in the corner. "Miss, let's stay out of the mansion less in the future. What if Madam finds out?" "Ollie, I can tell you that unless you report it to her, no one will know that we have sneaked out. Ollie served as she helped Miss take off her coat, only to hear a sound coming from the courtyard. Yinger! Yinger! Oh no, why did second sister come at this time? She wouldn't know that we had sneaked out. Yinger hurriedly stood up, but accidentally stumbled, and 2 or 3 strands of green hair scattered from her neatly coiled bun. Duyuer coldly glanced at Inger hiding behind the screen, and the maidservants quickly served snow-white tea and placed it in front of Miss Eyre's table. Yinger, I can tell you that no matter what good tea you have this time, I won't agree to help you make a lie. I'll do what I said today. Yinger walked out from behind the screen. Second sister, don't worry and get angry. Try my newly opened tea first, try it first, try it first. Duyuer couldn't resist, so she picked up the tea cup and took a light sip. In an instant, the beautiful and elegant aroma of the tea exploded in her mouth, and her furrowed eyebrows also relaxed a bit. Upon seeing this, Yinger quickly spoke up and said, Second sister, what? What's going on? It's just that my mother noticed me sneaking out of the mansion. It's okay. Later, Yinger will go to the Jinshio pavilion to face punishment on her own. Second sister, father, I hope my sister can protect me. After saying that, Yinger fell on Yuer's lap like a little rabbit. I can tell you, even if the old grandmother speaks for you this time, we can't let our father exempt you from punishment. Duyuer pushed away the little rabbit lying on her lap. Inger, do you know that the Empress Dowager of the Imperial Concubine specially sent a tutor to our mansion today to teach you etiquette and rules? That lady has served many masters with a noble status, and her parents and father are waiting in the front hall to summon you, but you haven't been seen in the waiting room. The old lady's face is not very ugly, and her parents also guessed that you sneaked out of the mansion and said a lot of good things before sending her away. This time you have to give her a scolding. Inger collapsed on the ground, and ripples gradually appeared in her eyes. Before she could fully recover, Aunt Qingwu arrived at the Chunhua pavilion with a group of elderly women and said, Miss San, Madam has sent you to the Jinshio pavilion. Aunt, Miss, don't let Madam and Grandpa wait any longer. Come with me quickly. If only the mother were to handle this matter, she would probably only be punished hastily. However, now that the father has learned about sneaking out of the mansion, he has also lost face in front of the palace maids. It seems that this matter cannot escape either. The warbler howled inwardly. Chapter 2. Spring Blossom Scenery. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Inside the main hall of Jinshio Pavilion, Duitian was sitting with his chest in danger, while Mrs. Tang was touching her forehead with mint naphtha. Liuxia, hurry up, add more sandalwood in the stove, I smell so peaceful and calm. As soon as Du Yinger stepped into the hall door, her father slammed the table and stood up, saying, Yinger, it's okay to be arrogant in your daily life, but she hasn't seen any knowledgeable and rational noblewoman today. Not only did you lose face today, but it's also rumored that you're going to laugh at our Prime Minister's mansion. Yinger dared not speak anymore, but extended her hand like a spring onion and said, Father, my daughter knows her mistake. I will endure any beating or punishment. Outside the hall, the servant ran in and said, Master, the king of Beiping has come to pay his respects. Upon hearing these words, Yinger secretly rejoiced and quickly gave a glance to her mother beside her. Master, why don't you go to the front yard to get busy with government affairs? I'm here. Duitian waved his sleeve and said, Jing'an Hall needs to kneel and hit the board, so that we can show the strict family style of our Prime Minister's mansion. In addition, we can replace a group of servants inside and outside the Chunhua pavilion, leaving only a few confidants. Let's see how she can slip away next time. As Yinger was about to refute, she pressed back. At this moment, her father was in a fit of anger and didn't say much. I had to pout and promise. Pa. 20 strokes of the hand board were finished, and Yinger was already in tears. The pear blossom with rain made people feel pity. Mrs. Tang ordered people to quickly present a swelling and pain-relieving powder, and then asked Qingwu to call Yue. Mother. Today Ying'er was at fault first, but how could her father punish her so severely? Look at mother, Ying'er's hands are swollen. She pouted, trying hard not to cry, but tears kept falling. Yue walked forward and took out a silk handkerchief to gently wipe away the tears on her sister's face. Madame Tang sighed and said, Ying'er, you are the Prime Minister. I, Ying'er, am the legitimate daughter of the Prime Minister's mansion. I should be cautious in my words and actions, balanced in my relaxation, gentle and frugal, generous and courteous. I was born for the glory of the Du family. Mother, Ying'er's ears are almost calloused when hearing these words, so please don't say anything more. Mrs. Tang. Ying'er, my mother asked you, who are your eldest and second sisters? Du Sheng'er, the eldest daughter of the Du family. Yue pushed her impatiently and let out a few clicks. Ying'er let out a long sigh, and her mother and second sister's faces were not good looking. Ying'er knew her mistake. The eldest daughter of the Du family was the virtuous consort of the current dynasty, and the second daughter of the Du family was the quasi-concubine of the Prince of Beiping. Upon hearing the three words, King of Beiping, Yue's fair face blushed and she picked up a fan to cover half of her face. The servant beside also chuckled lightly. Ying'er, since you know the wealth and prestige of the entire family, don't do anything that would damage the family's reputation. The greater the power, the more it feels like living on the tip of a knife. Any handle will put the Du family in a state of dire straits. Mrs. Tang looked at the little girl in front of her, her fair face with slightly raised corners of her eyes, the small mouth is as pink and tender as peach petals. At the age of a flower, Ying'er obediently knelt on the cattail. But this small life lives in a pile of gold and jade, growing up in a deep mansion, living a noble life that others dare not even imagine. Du Ying'er was born like the people in this Prime Minister's mansion. The fate of a family is also one's own destiny, unable to avoid, I can't escape either. Go kneel at Jingyan Hall for a night. Mrs. Tang couldn't bear to look at her again. Ying'er breathed a sigh of relief and forced a bright smile towards her second sister. The candlelight in Jingyan Hall is faint, and the piercing cold is brushed by the night breeze. Ying'er pulled her sleeves and looked at Ollie, who was also trembling beside her. Ollie, I've implicated you again. After being punished, how about I have the small kitchen make a lamb pot for you to eat? Okay, but Miss Ollie wants to eat it tomorrow. Okay. I'll have someone make it for you tomorrow. Before the words could be finished, the master and servant felt drowsy and leaned against each other to sleep. The next day, when Ying'er woke up, she was already on the bed. Hiss. Her knees hurt so much. Ying'er covered her legs and rolled on the bed. Can it not hurt? My little ancestor. My grandmother was sitting in front of the bed. Grandmother. You're here. Your grandson was severely punished yesterday. Why didn't you come to save him yesterday? Ying'er took advantage of the situation and swayed her grandmother's clothes, playing coquettishly. Only when the board touches you and causes you pain can you remember for long. Do you think the nanny in the palace is really just here to teach you etiquette and rules? The old grandmother gave Ying'er a sharp scrape on her nose. Ying'er chuckled and said, my second sister is going to marry the Prince of Beiping as her concubine. The mother consort of the Prince of Beiping, Lady Sun Guifei, has always been at odds with my eldest sister. However, this marriage was arranged by the emperor himself, and Lady Sun dare not disobey. Since this nanny was sent by Lady Sun Guifei, she will naturally have her use. If there is any mistake in my family, she will definitely share it with Lady Sun Guifei. In that case, it would be better to just brush her face and let the old lady return to the palace on her own. Grandmother, are you right? Ah. You little brat, you have learned to be suspicious of people's hearts. My grandparents looked at the little person on the bed in shock. Where can the granddaughter of General Hugua's only daughter be so poor? Ying'er joked to her grandmother. Don't laugh anymore, let Fukong lead Ruyun in. The old grandmother said outside the hall. I have seen the young lady like a cloud, and the young lady is happy and healthy. I saw the woman dressed in blue and white plain gauze, bowing respectfully in a formal manner. Grandmother, is this? Ying'er looked at her in confusion. Ruyun was trained and raised by me. Now that there is a new group of people in your room, I naturally want to watch over you. Ruyun understands the rules and has a careful mind, so she happens to watch over you for me. My grandparents looked at this lovely girl with kindness. Yes. The people around my grandmother are the most considerate. Ying'er thanked her. Ying'er looked out the window with her head up. It is precisely when the flowers are in full bloom. Chunhua Pavilion, the scenery is just as its name suggests. In the courtyard, there are blooming flowers. This vast courtyard of the Prime Minister's mansion is deep, often with black walls and white tiles. Most of the gardens are planted with tall and prominent green plants such as bamboo and fir. But this spring flower pavilion is different, except here, with pink walls and glazed tiles, various palace lamps hanging in front of the porch, and lotus flowers blooming along the path. The various decorations seem to be placed in a Jiangnan misty rain garden thousands of miles away. Ying'er got up early and picked left and right in front of the makeup box. Is it paired with this butterfly pattern step shake or this red gold double peach hairpin today? Sigh, sigh. Ruyun, you are the best at combing your hair. Why don't you help me comb a new pattern? Only by dressing up like that fairy can I live up to the beautiful spring scenery. Don't worry, Mississippi. You are so beautiful. How can Ollie and I dress you up? You can rest assured. Ruyun smiled and placed the Sioux embroidery gold shirt in her hand on the bed. In the backyard of Chunhua Pavilion, there is a pavilion specially designed by Mr. Du to imitate the Tsanglang forest in Suzhou for Ying'er. Every beautiful day, the Du mansion will release a famous post inviting ladies and daughters from various mansions to gather in the mansion. Now, it was during the busiest time at the spring pavilion. The pavilion is bustling with activity. Miss San arrives. With the voice of the young servant from Chongqing, various eyes looked towards the corridor entrance. Ying'er was dressed in Sioux embroidery and woven gold clothes. The lotus-colored skirt swayed playfully, holding a cloud-soothing fan in hand. Her hair was combed in her daughter's flying fairy bun, with a lotus-worn jade and golden step swaying inserted into the bun. Jade-headed moth eyebrows, my eyes are like autumn water, slightly lift the tail of the eye, for no apparent reason, there is a hint of seductive aura added. A pair of eyes warm and moist like water, elegant yet gentle in temperament, just like the most delicate flowers in spring immerse people in it. Du Ying'er has seen all the sisters, and all the sisters are happy. Ying'er is polite and dignified. At this time, a playful laugh emanated. Chapter 3. Is the little rascal again? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Yo yo, who should I be? It turns out to be the esteemed 3rd Mississippi. Your esteemed body and bones actually personally participated in this Chunhua festival. A woman in purple shook the Jiansui step between her temples. The people who were originally watching the warblers began to discuss. Ying'er has seen Sister Jinan, and she is happy. Ying'er did not rush to refute, but instead bowed in a formal manner to greet her. This move actually made people imagine the sarcastic appearance of Sun Jianan just now. I think it must be this beautiful scenery that brought my sister here. Ying'er thanks my sister for her favor. Now nobody knows the scenery of the Prime Minister Jai's mansion. Sisters haven't heard of it yet. These 3 young ladies have been invited to teach Mammy from the palace by virtue of your wife's love. But whoever thought that these 3 young ladies not only didn't accept the blessing of your wife, but also didn't even appear to meet Mammy? What's the rule? This tone was full of sarcasm. The 4 words, everyone rules, have a very heavy ending sound. As soon as Sun Jianan finished speaking, the crowd began to whisper. It's all said that the Zai Xiangfu has been a scholarly and elegant family for generations, but the rules of these three young ladies are really. Yes, this is not the style of the legitimate daughter. Sun Jianan heard the piercing chatter and proudly curled his lips as he crossed over from Yinger's side, heading straight towards the flower bed. He reached out and folded the blooming Yaohong peony, with its stamen appearing in layers of petals, like a venomous snake's messenger. Inger looked at the strange gazes of the crowd and said, Inger was feeling unwell that day. Her parents specially compensated the old lady. It was really difficult for her to recover from illness. How could she dare to betray the kindness of Empress Dowager Guifei? Empress Dowager Guifei has always been lenient and will definitely not argue with Inger. Do you think so, Sister Jianan? Sun Jianan was about to refute, but the maid behind her, Tan Xiang, raised her hand and pulled her. Miss, don't say anything more. Yinger saw this and walked up to her. Sister, the front hall is preparing a spring banquet. I heard that sister is studying housekeeper affairs, so why don't you take a look at the people's arrangements for her? Sun Jianan stopped speaking and just flicked the strand of hair back from her temples. She smiled lightly and said, What does my sister's family matter have to do with me? Ha! I've said this for a while, Tan Xiang, let's go. A group of servants and their families followed, and Sun Jianan walked out of the pavilion with jade steps. Inger sighed with a long sigh, don't let the spring scenery down. Let's enjoy it together, sisters. This difficult one has finally left. Ollie thought to herself. Miss, let's go to the front hall and see how the banquet is going. We must prepare everything properly and stick it up, Ruyun said, extending her hand to support Yinger. Yes. The banquet in the front hall is about to open, so I'll go take a look to avoid being told by the second sister that she's only interested in sightseeing and neglecting guests. If the second sister gets angry, my good tea will suffer again. The master and servant three laughed as they walked into the front hall. The bamboo forest by the pond in the front hall rustled, echoing the gentle spring breeze. The maids gathered by the pond to sprinkle fish and food, while the koi in the pond rolled up and down, competing to grab it. The fish in this pool are so happy, Forget it. Ruyun, go help me take a look at the mat and tell me later. Ollie and I will play with the fish by the pool, go. Yinger grabbed Ali's hand and walked towards the edge of the pool. Ruyun smiled helplessly and said, Yes, girl. With that, the warbler walked towards the pond in joy. You all go down, I'll play with the fish here for a while. Hey! Leave the bait behind. Yinger dismissed the maid, leaving only Ollie by her side. Yinger picked up the fallen branches by the pool and moved them towards the surface of the pool for an instant. Like the swaying waves that startle fish, the green algae at the bottom of the pond dyed the surface of the pond a pool of ink, and the slanting warm light was refracted into a beautiful color. The description in this poem is indeed good. I have seen the fish flipping over the seaweed, but when will I see the egret lighting the cigarette? Yinger raised her hand and tugged at Ali's sleeve. Miss, Ali's newly acquired clothes, please don't wrinkle them, Mississippi, hurry up and leave. The small kitchen is starting to serve dishes, and people will come and go soon, so don't rush into you. Ali helped the young lady squatting by the pool and looked at the front hall mat. Yinger stood up and patted her clothes, and the sound of silk and bamboo came from the front hall. Ali, let's go. Before he could finish speaking, the servant quickly walked over, and Yinger stumbled and almost fell into the pool. The servant quickly threw away the food plate and reached out to support the young lady in front of him. The calloused hand tightly grasped Yinger's tender and white jade hand, and in that moment, the skin collided. Dog servant. What are you doing? Get out of here. Ali pushed him away and stepped forward to protect the young lady. Yinger hurriedly cut her makeup and hair. Fortunately, she had just dismissed the maid, otherwise if someone saw her, she would have been criticized again. Yinger raised her head in anger and saw the servant kneeling by the pool, with food scattered on the plate. Looking up, which aunt is disciplining you and how do you do things? Ollie angrily asked. The servant lifted his head and met Yinger's eyes. It's the little rascal in that restaurant. Yinger was startled in her heart. You. The bartender in the restaurant. Ollie also recognized, yes, it's a lowly slave with long life. He knelt down again, afraid to look up. Chapter 4. White Egret Island. Did you come from White Egret Island? You are listening at novelfull.audio. You are so careless in handling things that you even sneaked into our mansion. What kind of thief are you? Ollie scrutinized the thin and weak young man in front of him. The tavern. The tavern owner kicked me out, and I met Zhang Mai, a servant of your mansion. He used all his wealth to beg the steward's aunt to choose me to enter the mansion, but I have no ulterior motives. Yu Changming quickly kowtowed to Yinger. Cough, 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 cough. I know, little one. When I hear the young lady talk about egrets, I can't help but think of my hometown of Egret Island. Therefore, some homesick people have lost their minds and collided with the young lady. Little one deserves to die 1,000 times. This is great. Yu Changming was so scared that he couldn't even lift his head. Upon hearing the 3 words, White Egret Island, Yinger immediately rejoiced. It should be noted that Jingzhou is the capital of Mo Kingdom, which is already a military stronghold. The entire city god is surrounded by high walls, and the bustling ancient capital is dotted with official offices and towering temples. Half-city palaces and pavilions are rarely seen with green waters and green mountains. But, the White Egret continent is very different. Yinger has long heard of the green mountains and continuous ridges of the White Egret continent. The most intoxicating thing is that the egret stands tall in autumn, with clear shadows flying in the evening sky. Oh! White Egret Island, did you come from White Egret Island? Yinger was about to step forward and ask, and the second sister walked towards her. Yinger, what are you doing here? The banquet at Chunhua Pavilion has been arranged, so hurry up and follow me to the front hall. Yuer looked at the scene before her. Yinger's face was slightly red, Ollie pouted in anger, the servant kneeling on the ground dare not look up, even the food plate was scattered all over the ground. She spoke anxiously and asked, what's wrong, what's going on? Didn't this little servant bump into you? Miss Eyre, you don't know. As soon as Ollie spoke, she was blocked by Yinger and turned back. Sister Eyre, it's okay. Let's go to the front hall quickly, otherwise the guests will be in a hurry. We should say that the rules of our Prime Minister's mansion are too strict. Yuer reached out her hand and patted Yinger's forehead, you. Let's go, let's go. Yu Changming was stunned in place, and Yinger walked forward holding the hand of second sister. However, before leaving, Ollie gave him a fierce glance. Startled, Yu Changsheng lowered his head again, Yinger, it's called Yinger. Chunhua Pavilion, cheers and chips intertwined. A table and table were set up in the main hall. First, 10 dishes and 5 fruits were served, and then some dingxing tea and food were served. The dishes are all seasonal fresh goods, such as rice soup made from fresh fish and shrimp, 3 yellow cakes made from sweet potatoes and milk, fresh fruits and melons from Jiangsu and Zhejiang that have just been offered as tribute. Each table is delicious and exquisite to eat. Yinger held her white jade ivory chopsticks but didn't move for a long time. White Egret Island, she kept murmuring in her heart. Ollie, come here. Yinger turned her head to greet Ollie beside her. You go and inquire about which courtyard Yu Changsheng belongs to. Yinger whispered to Ollie, blocking her mouth. The guests are scattered, and the spring flower pavilion has a lamp in its palm. Yinger half squinted on the small couch, like a cloud fanning on the side. "Miss, I have heard that Yu Changming is the new servant in our courtyard," said Ollie, leaning against Yinger's ear. "Staying in this courtyard is boring. I have always longed for the White Egret Island, and it happens that Yu Changming's family is there. He must be very familiar with this place. Ruyun, you can arrange for him to be a cleaning servant in the front yard of the spring flower pavilion," Yinger said outside the window. The maid outside came and said, Miss Eyre is here." Yinger stood up and walked to the door, poking her head out. "Sister Eyre, why did you come to find Yinger at night?" After speaking, she instructed Ollie to serve tea. "Today at the spring banquet, you were so absent-minded. I heard that the Sun family girl laughed at you in public. Are you okay?" Yuer's eyes were filled with pity. Ollie placed tea on the small pear-wood table and placed several plates of pastries. "Second sister, I, Du Yinger, am not easy to provoke. How could she provoke me with her small family?" Yinger picked up the porcelain cup and said, "You're being reckless. How can you say this nonsense? Her Sun family is indeed not from a high background, but there is a noble concubine and empress, let alone the fact that the Prince of Beiping was born of a noble concubine and empress, and there is no way to say that he will inherit the throne in the future. If these words reach the ears of others, they would think that our Prime Minister's office is proud of our favor." Yinger listened to the beginning of the conversation and quickly softened, saying, "Good sister, I won't talk nonsense anymore. I just feel sorry that when you marry into the prince's mansion in Beiping, you have to call each other relatives like Sun Jinan. I really feel frustrated. Alright, let's not talk about it for now. Come and taste my tea. Hurry up and bring it to you, Ollie." Yinger smiled and Yuer picked up the tea cup, sniffing the slowly rising heat and enjoying the overflowing fragrance with her nose. The hibiscus flowers in the teacup stretch freely, and the tea soup is also a light pink, fresh, elegant, but without losing its mellow fragrance. Well, it's really good. It's mixed with some Tsangshan snow green in the hibiscus flowers to blend in. It's elegant and has a faint fragrance. Yinger, your tea cooking skills have improved. Second sister, you're really amazing. As long as it's this soup and water, you can taste it and know what ingredients there are. Yinger said mischievously, holding her cheek in her hand. Speaking of which, the Prince of Beiping grew up in the palace from a young age, and his mother was now a powerful figure in the harem. Thanks to the Emperor's grace, the second sister granted a special permission to marry into the Beiping palace as a concubine 1 year later. Wang Yinger from Beiping has met a few times before, and she is humble and polite. Although she is closely related to Sun Jinan, it now appears that she is different from those petty people. The only thought in Yinger's heart was, if someone close to her can always enjoy peace, she will be satisfied. Chapter 5. Life is like grass, but it doesn't mean I want to live a humble life. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In the morning, it was the busiest time at the Spring Flower Pavilion. The sweeping mothers were busy in the courtyard, and breakfast was also served in the small kitchen. Yinger reluctantly stretched her waist and said, Ollie, have I completed the task I entrusted you with? Miss, when you go to the front hall, you will see that servant soon. Ollie lifted the curtain in front of the window and looked at Yinger, who was still feeling drowsy. The morning breeze gently brushed past, and at the top of the peach tree branches in the courtyard, several clusters of flower buds were quietly revealing their tender yellow stamens. Yinger walked out of the room wearing a light yellow silk dress. After having breakfast and visiting her grandmother at Shoan Hall, Yinger went to the front hall and looked towards the pond in the courtyard. Indeed, Yu Changming was carrying a bucket and adding water to the pond. Yinger raised her eyebrows lightly and gave a glance to Ollie. I have seen the young lady with a long life, and she is in peace. He lay on the ground, still not looking up. I have chosen you to serve in our courtyard, do you know why? Yinger picked up a teacup and sipped lightly. Miss wants to know about the scenery of Egret Island, so I have sent a servant to tell you about it. The boy's answer was quite straightforward. Yu Changming raised his head and suddenly met Yinger's gaze. The young man in front of him was dressed in grey cloth, the eyebrows and eyes are slender and handsome, and the radiance in the eyes appears soft yet full of a hint of malice, the bright red lips slightly curled up, outlining the handsome young man. Yinger shook her mind and said, "Have you ever read a book? How many words do you recognize?" Yu Changming stood up and said, "I attended a school when I was young, and I understand both words and books. I've seen so many servants named Yinger who don't know how to read big characters. This servant has even attended a school, it's really rare. Since your family can afford your education, why have you fallen into slavery?" Yinger felt a bit puzzled. "My parents have both fallen, my family has fallen, and I have also fallen here. Now this life is like grass, I can't help it." After saying that, Yu Changsheng lowered his body again. Ing Er, who was originally enjoying tea, almost choked on the water upon hearing his experience. Cough, cough, cough. Although your luck may be a bit bumpy, your life is in your own hands. Since I have summoned you, you have your own benefits. As soon as you can read and write, you will present daily books and posts about the anecdotes and scenery of the White Egret continent. If you can make this girl happy and have your good friend. Yu Changming was slightly stunned, and the corners of his mouth couldn't help but tremble. Yinger stood up and walked up to him, saying, "Life is like grass, but it doesn't make you live a humble life. Think about what interesting things can make me laugh." He dared not look up at her, only cautiously caught a glimpse of the girl's embroidered shoes with soft pearl soles and smelled the faint fragrance of magnolia water. Until that beautiful shadow walks away, he dared to look up. Another gust of fresh wind blew away the petals of peach blossoms, drifting away, gone with the wind, dotted petals fell into the pond in the courtyard, and a koi jumped out of the water, causing ripples to appear on the originally calm surface of the pond. Life is like grass, but it doesn't mean I want to live a humble life. At night, like clouds, several thick stacks of grass paper were presented. The handwriting on the slightly yellowed grass paper is vigorous and powerful, perhaps due to the habit of writing. Each character with a curled tail pen has an upward curve. "This character is actually written well," murmured Yinger. "The egret descends into the autumn water, flying alone like falling frost. The little slave's family is named after the egret. In autumn, the egret dives down and flies over the river, as if a cloud of white frost is falling. In the spring and summer seasons, all the mountains are covered with egrets, which can be said to be, the mountains are full of egrets. Sometimes there are painted boats floating on the lake picking lotus flowers, and white egrets standing on the beach fishing." Yinger lay on the couch, leaning against the dim yellow glass lamp, carefully reading the scenery on this paper. "The mountains are full of white egrets." Yinger closed her eyes slightly and continued to mutter in her heart. Chapter 6. Is it a blessing or a curse? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Taiping Palace, inside the Huachan Hall, in front of the Buddha's altar were filled with various offerings, and the golden sandalwood stove next to it was scattered with faint smoke. The woman kneeling on the soft cushion is holding Buddhist beads in her hand, muttering incessantly in her mouth, "Report to the Empress Dowager." The servant interrupted the seemingly peaceful scene with a slightly trembling voice. "Say. What's the matter?" The Empress Dowager brushed her clothes and slowly stood up. "The virtuous consort of the Qizhou Palace has become pregnant." The servant quickly knelt down on the ground, afraid to look up for a long time. The emerald Buddha bead that was originally dancing in her hand suddenly fell to the ground, and the woman's mouth twitched slightly, the slender willow eyebrows gently lifted up and said, "A group of trash." After that, the phoenix hairpin, adorned with gemstones on its head, also swayed due to the movement of its body. "Empress Dowager, please calm down and be pregnant this October." Once she gave birth, although Empress Dowager Xian is pregnant, who knows if she can give birth. Empress Dowager, please calm down. Not bad, it's a good thing that Empress Yen is pregnant, let alone that she has been drinking the medicine all along. Sigh. Then I wish Empress Yen a speedy birth of a dragon. The maid on the side quickly responded, yes, yes, Empress Dowager. You don't have to worry about this matter at all. Whether Empress Dowager Yen can have this baby or not depends on fate. Empress Dowager, what you are most concerned about at this moment should be the marriage of the Prince of Beiping. The maid picked up the Buddha beads that fell to the ground and handed them to the lady beside her. The Empress Dowager reached out and took the string of Buddhist beads, the dark green beads swirling on the gilded armor. Go and summon Sunner into the palace. I have something to remind him of in this palace. The maidservant retreated, and the incense burner in the Buddhist temple wafted out streams of sandalwood fragrance. Candlelight shines on the Buddha statue filled with golden body, the golden light shines brightly. Prime Minister's office, Jinxiu Pavilion. In the courtyard, heavy rain poured down on the bluestone ground, creating ripples one after another. Yuer placed the tea cup on the small table and looked at her cheerful mother. Mother, what's up? You look so happy, Yinger asked. Madame Tang looked at the two graceful girls in front of her, her mouth growing longer. Mother, please stop laughing and speak quickly. Yuer, who has always been calm, asked her mother. Today, the palace reports that Empress Dowager Yen is pregnant with a dragon descendant. Mrs. Tang said, and Yinger immediately jumped up in joy. The eldest sister's wish for a son has finally been fulfilled, which is truly a great joyous event. Yuer also smiled happily. It's truly a blessing from heaven for my family. Our family has been blessed with many happy events and becoming a mother. It's truly gratifying. Today, your father went to court and learned about the victory of the Northwest War, and your elder brother is about to return to the capital to take office. The heart of being a mother can finally be let go. Mrs. Tang said, tears welling up in her eyes. Big brother. Big brother is also coming back. Yinger's little face bloomed into a flower. No one in the city of Jingzhou knows the name of Du Lin, the eldest young master of the Du family. He is the general of Zhenbei who fights in all directions. He has regained the Northwest Desert for the current emperor and made remarkable military achievements. However, due to her young age and frequent gatherings with her family, Yinger has not seen her elder brother for almost 4 years. Yuer, Yinger. Now that your elder sister and elder brother have settled down, your father and I only hope that Yuer will have a comfortable time in the prince's mansion in Beiping. By the way, Yinger's hairpin ceremony is estimated to be 3 months away. When you both get married, your mother will be at ease. Upon hearing this, Yuer's face turned red again and she smiled shyly. I don't want to get married. Yinger wants to stay with her parents and grandmother in the mansion for a lifetime. Yinger pounced mischievously at her mother. The heavy rain outside the courtyard was still pouring down, and Mrs. Tang in the Jinxiu Pavilion smiled and said, this is a blessing for our family, a great blessing. So, is all of this a blessing or a curse? Chapter 7. Lying alone in front of the Lament, sniffing the wind and rain. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. The rain in Jingzhou is falling like breaking the sky, with dark clouds rolling and everything soaking in this heavy rainy night. The prince's mansion in Beiping is filled with the sound of pipa playing in a decadent manner. The pavilions and towers in the mansion are adorned with emerald bamboo and strange-shaped stones, stacked together to create an extraordinary scenery. At the 4 corners of the side hall stand white marble columns, and the blue gauze bead curtain ripples with the wind. The whole house was covered in black brocade. Inside, there is a square soft couch placed against the wall, and the fine woven satin is also lightly draped on the ground. The man on the couch supported his head with his hands, his eyes slightly closed. Wearing a crow-blue robe, the collar slightly pulled open, grasping the wine glass with slender fingertips and swaying lightly, the thin lips are slightly swollen. As the song, Drunk Moon, was about to reach its climax, the sound of the pipa gradually stopped. The beauty in front of her was caressing the phoenix-necked pipa, but her jade hand stopped at the strings. Jean, why don't you play? The man on the couch opened his eyes and looked straight at her. Jin's cloud temples were high, and a beautiful peony was slanted between her forehead. She covered her mouth and smiled, her delicate jade hands picking up a strand of green silk scattered in her ear. Her eyes flowed towards the man on the couch, instantly enchanting and captivating. Prince, I just feel sad and can't bounce back for a while. After speaking, her eyelashes trembled slightly, her delicate face blushed, and her lips parted slightly. He extended his hand and smiled at Imogen. Imogen placed his pipa on a pear-wood stool and turned around to lie in the arms of the prince. I heard that the prince is going to marry his concubine, but if the prince is in a promiscuous family all night, I wonder if Miss Du will agree. Imogen's words were light and crisp, and her rosy nails lightly scraped against the prince's earlobe. He. Regardless of her background, marry her to this king. She was born as the king of Beiping and died as the king's ghost. She can only do whatever I tell her. Beauty, why do you have to worry about these things? Imogen gave a seductive smile. I have been worried too much. She lifted her hand and wrapped it around the prince's neck, half covering it. The woman's snow-white collarbone revealed a very ambiguous red mark, and her light silk skirt fell to the ground. The pearl curtain above the soft couch trembled slightly. Chunhua Pavilion, Miss, today's presentation. Ollie handed the stack of paper to Yinger. Somehow, Yinger's heart has been hanging in anticipation of the arrival of this letter. The outside was making a lot of noise. What's up? It's so noisy outside. Yinger asked. Miss, the maids are covering the snow-covered jasmine kept in the fence with oilskin paper. Miss, aren't these flowers the most precious? How can they get soaked? Ru Yun replied. Yes, precious flowers should be carefully kept in captivity. Yinger's expression showed a hint of desolation, and she sighed as she looked at the blurry scene in the rain. Slowly opened the stack of presentation books. Years come and months come, not to be reckless. In the White Egret continent, there is always a different kind of joy in any season and scenery. Just like this rainy night, although everything is trapped in the rain, the little slave feels that it is precisely in this hazy world that there is a certain kind of joy. Lying alone in front of the barrier, sniffing the wind and rain. The pattering sound of rain outside the window pulled Yinger's thoughts back from this book. The rain had been pouring for several hours, and the clear breeze carried the rain as it drifted in the air. Sniff the wind and rain. Yinger murmured. The candlelight inside the room was blurry like tiny stars, with only the orange flames in the glass lamp in front of me jumping joyfully. Yinger regained her senses, and the hazy scenery outside the window pavilion dissolved and soaked the window. The peach tree branches cast a slender and tangled shadow on the window paper. Yinger put on a flowing cloud cloak and walked to the door, reaching out her hand to push open the tightly closed wooden door. At the moment when the door opened, a few drops of cold touch came. Yinger blinked and blinked her eyes. She took a shallow deep breath. A subtle and unique taste seeped into the Oriole's mind. It is the wind sweeping through the soil mixed with the unique fragrance of grass, unable to see or touch, this cool yet powerful taste. Yinger slowly closed her eyes and sucked heavily on the scent of the rain, gradually bringing in the fragrance of the trees. Take a careful and light sniff, it's the fragrance of jasmine. Yinger exclaimed in surprise. The aroma of jasmine has never been so strong before, and this fragrance is an experience that has never been experienced before. The jasmine fragrance before was elegant and subtle, but in this endless rain, it is so gorgeous and fierce. She reached out her hand, 1 drop, 2 drops. At this moment, Yinger truly felt the beauty of rain. Small kitchen, Yu Changming sat by the stone steps, his head resting on the wall. At this moment, he also extended his hand, feeling the raindrops recklessly. The scent of the snowy jasmine seems to have also reached here. Yu Changming squinted his eyes slightly and raised the corners of his mouth slightly. At that moment, that earth-shattering moment, Du Ying'er and Yu Changming extended their hands simultaneously, feeling the same rainy night, lying alone in front of the fence, sniffing the wind and rain. Chapter 8. Sincerity. What is sincerity? You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Shoan Hall, Ying'er, buy more soybean milk from the water mill, and don't use so many cakes and yubing, deep. Fried round and flat dough. Cake, for breakfast to avoid food accumulation. Grandma ordered someone to serve a bowl of soup again. Got it. Granddaughter is just a bit greedy today. Choi. Ying'er's mouth was full of food, and her sudden sneeze almost made her mouth spit out. Ryu quickly handed over her handkerchief, and Yuer also rubbed her back. Okay, why did you catch a cold? Maybe it's raining, right? Grandma turned her head and asked Dolly, who was silent on the side. Madam, last night the girl stood in front of the door watching the rain, maybe she caught a cold from the cold. Ollie explained. No. Grandmother, second sister, I was sniffing the rain last night, it had a unique flavor. Grandmother shook her head helplessly. Ying'er, you're talking nonsense again. You're the only one who can do something unreasonable, Yuer said. It's raining and you can't leave the house. You can study and work as a female worker in the room. There are many interesting things in the boudoir. You little skin monkey, however, has a crooked sword and does some inappropriate things. Look at your second sister who is gentle and elegant, that's what a lady looks like. Grandma smiled and looked at Yuer. Yuer remained silent, just picked up a cup of tea and savored it lightly. Grandmother, Ying'er read in the book that the image of a woman is also like the product of 100 flowers. I think this statement is very accurate, Ying'er said as she looked at her second sister. Oh. So who do you think is interested in what kind of flower products? Second sister put down the teacup and asked with interest. Ying'er put down her dishes and put her hand behind her, speaking like a storyteller. Sister Chang is needless to say, gentle and amiable. She is graceful and magnificent, like the peonies in spring. Sister Air, let me think, by the way. Water hibiscus is the most beautiful flower of Sister Air. Her character is square, she is elegant, and her appearance is like water hibiscus. In autumn, it blooms like a beautiful flower. The fragrance of this hibiscus is light and elegant, just like Sister Air's. After saying this, Ying'er wrapped her arms around Yuer's neck and coquettishly said, Second sister, let me smell it. Do you have a delicate fragrance like lotus on your body? Yuer quickly got up and started playing with Ying'er, holding a handkerchief. The old grandmother on the side was also amused and laughed out loud. After having lunch, the old grandmother was willing to let the two of them carefully return to her yard. Second sister, don't go back to the pear fragrance hall for now. Let's make agarwood in my courtyard and play. Ying'er blinked her eyes and coquettishly smiled at Yuer. Yuer could not resist. The sisters walked towards the Chunhua pavilion hand in hand. As soon as she arrived at the front hall, Ying'er caught a glimpse of Yu Changsheng, who was busy. Ollie, go tell him to come to you for the reward before dinner, Ying'er said sideways. Yuer on the side was a little puzzled, who did such a good job that you could personally appreciate him? No one. It's just a household servant. If you do a good job, I will naturally reward you, so that the new servants in my courtyard know that I have clear rewards and punishments. There's nothing I can do with you, let's go and make incense. Inside the spring flower pavilion, laughter echoed from the girls' boudoir. The exquisite small room is surrounded by beautiful mountain and water barriers, and a painted 8-treasure screen creates 2 horizontal halls. The ground is covered with a light purple short velvet carpet, there is a Rui round table in the center of the room, 2 pair wood carved flower stools are placed on the left and right sides of the table. On the table lay a delicate cloud-patterned diamond-shaped small carbon stove, various fragrant products. Yue held a scroll in her hand and said, 7 taels of agarwood, 2 taels of incense, 5 taels of stack incense, 4 taels of chicken tongue incense, 2 taels of sandalwood and 2 taels of musk each. Take 100 white plums, Inger, slowly make them, but don't rush to make incense. Yinger was holding tweezers and carefully picking up sandalwood slices from the small porcelain jar. Second sister, Yinger. I want to ask you a question. The usually straightforward little girl is rarely charming. What's going on? Are you separated from your sister? Are you embarrassed to ask a question? Yue Xiao stopped her hair and asked. Sister. Do you want to marry the king of Beiping? Yinger sat up straight and looked quietly at the second sister in front of her. For a long time, Yue remained silent. The carved Flo Boshan incense burner on the table is steaming through water, and the faint plum blossom fragrance is scattered in the air. The orders of my parents and the words of a matchmaker, let alone this marriage, thanks to the grace of the emperor, I definitely want to get married. Yue said lightly. Sister, I knew you had to get married, but do you have any feelings for the Prince of Beiping? Yinger's words gradually lowered. You're a strange little girl today. Why have you been asking about this all along? Yue asked. Yinger is used to being arrogant and pampered by her parents in her boudoir. Although her eldest sister got married early, she also takes great care of Yinger, the young sister. Yinger knew that the days in the palace were not as comfortable as they seemed on the surface, but she couldn't help much. Second sister is only a few years older than herself, but ultimately she wants to get married, but unfortunately, she married into the prince's mansion in Beiping. Yinger is just afraid that her beloved sister won't be able to marry her beloved, and that she will find it difficult to live in someone else's mansion. Yinger, I just hope my sister can marry a true person and live a comfortable life in the future. Yinger's heart couldn't help but feel sour. Yue reached out to stroke Yinger's small face and said, Yinger. Sincere. What is sincerity? It would be best if we could marry a sincere person. If not, we can only remember one thing. From the moment we made the engagement, my sincerity can only be entrusted to him. My wife is my husband, who can do that? Yue's words were faint, but the words penetrated Yinger's heart. Perhaps the charcoal stove has been burning for a long time, and the sandalwood slices are gradually turning black from the smoke. The smell became choking. I was just talking, look, this sandalwood slice is all burnt. Alright, don't say anything more, let's finish making this incense. Yue skillfully picked up the leaky net to separate the incense slices. Sister. Yinger's eyes were marked with ripples, and Yue caressed her hand without making a sound. She still smiled calmly as usual. Chapter 9. Mutual pleasure in love. Foolish people talk about dreams. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The late spring wind mixed with flying willows, rustling the leaves. Rumors of wind spread from the inner palace. The Prince of Beiping specially requested the emperor to advance his marriage with the Du family. Once this matter arises, there are various opinions in the city of Jingzhou. Outside the prime minister's office, surrounded by everyone. On the steed of the Xiongjuan, the young general sat proudly, his battle robe solemn, Xuanjia Mingguang. Wen Yuantang, son Du Lin pays his respects to his father and mother, who are blessed with longevity and good health. The elder brother knelt on the ground, his face filled with coldness and vicissitudes. Liner, get up quickly and let my mother take a good look at you. Mrs. Tang had already shed tears. Big brother has triumphed and returned, and little sister congratulates big brother here. Yue, Inger congratulated in unison. Sister, please come on, these two little girls have become more and more generous after years of absence, ha ha ha. Du Lin waved his hand and the servant behind him presented a group of sandalwood boxes. Brother, what is this? Yinger asked. These boxes contain the black fox fur and southern ginseng treasures that I obtained in the northwest, which I brought back for my parents and sisters to appreciate. My son has obtained a rare snow fox fur and has been ordered to be sent to the palace to present to the emperor and the virtuous consort. Du Lin said with great energy. Okay. Liner has a heart, let's move to the inner hall and have a good gathering. Du Yiqian stood up and said. At this time, the Prime Minister's mansion, the scenery is boundless. However, in a matter of 3 or 2 days, the palace officials arrived at the Prime Minister's mansion with a grand presence, following the imperial edict. The Du family and others all knelt down in front of the court, waiting for the internal officials to announce. Today, our family has been specially ordered by the emperor to come to the mansion to announce and follow the principles of heaven. The emperor's decree is. I have heard that Du Yuer, the daughter of the prime minister, Xian Shu dignified, gentle and sincere, outstanding in appearance. I am delighted to hear about it. In the current year of the king of Beiping, he has already weakened his crown and is suitable for marriage. He should choose a virtuous woman to marry. Du Yuer, the second daughter of the Du family, was born into a beautiful woman named Shi. She was born in heaven with the prince of Beiping, and in order to become a beautiful woman, she was specially betrothed to the prince of Beiping as her concubine. All etiquette shall be jointly handled by the Ministry of Rites and the Imperial Censorate, and the wedding shall be arranged on a good day after the imperial edict was announced. The Du family shouted in unison, adhere to the emperor's grace, long live the emperor. Long live the emperor. Ying'er raised her head and looked at the second sister kneeling beside her. She had no significant waves on her face, there is neither joy nor sadness. After everyone saluted, they stood up and said, I dare to ask Zhao Neguan, why did my daughter's marriage with the prince of Beiping come earlier? Is it? Mr. Du asked tentatively. This is the emperor's holy will. It must be because His Royal Highness the Prince of Beiping has a deep affection for Miss Du that he specifically requested this edict from the emperor. Otherwise, he would have to wait for another year and a half. Zhao Neguan replied with a smile to Mr. Du, yes, yes, yes. Zhao Neguan, please move to the inner hall. I have ordered someone to prepare the table, and Neguan, please enjoy it well to share the joy of this marriage. Mr. Du and his group gathered before and after moving to the inner hall. The lively crowd dissipated, and Ying'er and Yuer retreated behind the screen. The two looked at each other silently. Miss 2, Miss 3, the old lady asked the ladies to come to Shoan Hall to talk. Aunt Fukan came to pass the message, yes, we'll go now. Yuer was the first to respond. Shoan Hall, after serving the sweet and crispy mash to the girls, all of you should step down, ordered the old grandmother. Ying'er, who should have been clamoring for a second bowl of sweet and crispy mash on weekdays, held the bowl but hesitated to deliver it to her mouth. Ying'er, what's wrong with that? Isn't this sweet and crispy mash your favorite food on weekdays? Yuer asked softly. Second sister, I don't want you to get married. Ying'er's words clearly became sad and deep. Silly child, there's no such thing as not getting married in a woman's family. Even if you're extremely unwilling, you'll have to face it. Grandma looked at Ying'er sitting on the bench, her eyes slightly turning red, and said. As a woman in this deep courtyard, the matter of marriage is not something I can settle on my own, and I have no regrets about this marriage. Yuer's words were faint, like the calm and peaceful afterglow of the sunset. But, sister, if this husband is not the one you love, how should you get along with him? This marriage is a lifelong event, don't say anything more, Ying'er. The old grandmother's tone was tinged with a hint of anger. Good Ying'er, my sister has a lesson to tell you today. You and I, as well as my elder sister, were raised by the noble family of Jin Zuanyu, different from the children of those poor families. They not only enjoy the wealth of the family, but also have to bear the mission of glorifying the family. Do you know these? Yuer asked. The grandmother on the side nodded and remained silent, only looking at the warbler with a mournful face beside her. These days of wealth and prosperity may be luxurious and worry-free, but compared to a lifetime of constraints, I prefer to be free and carefree, marry a true person, or else I won't get married and go up the mountain to be my aunt. Yinger's words startled her grandmother. Although the old grandmother cherished her grandchildren, who could have predicted what the road ahead would be like? Instead of making Yinger fantasize about love, it would be better to speak harshly about the person in her dream. But, who didn't walk step by step from this innocent little girl? Looking at the little Jiaoyi in front of me, but the old grandmother couldn't open her mouth. Life is like a journey in adversity, and visitors are also pedestrians. Inger, don't get entangled in this matter, let alone I haven't married into the prince's mansion in Beiping yet. I still need to live my life slowly in the future, Ware said. Language strike. Aunt Qingwu walked towards the three of them and said, Madam has invited Miss Eyre to come over and said she needs to explain something. Yuer stood up and bowed to her grandmother. Granddaughter is leaving. Inger, I'm afraid my sister has been busy these days. Since she has some free time, let's enjoy this hard-won time. Yuer couldn't bear to say more and quickly followed Qingwu out. Mutual affection is a foolish dream, and mutual respect and non-interference are the best combination of power and interests between the two families. The night is as cool as water, and the warbler sits on the stone steps in the front hall, gazing at the moon. She reached out her hand, wanting to hold the desolate white moon in her hand, but, the hazy moonlight still revealed some brightness through the cracks of the fingers. Yinger stood up and dismissed the maidservants following behind, walking aimlessly in this vast courtyard. The moon is as white as snow, and the silence and cold radiance sprinkle on the blue stone road. The hibiscus flowers on the roadside are also gradually withering. No matter how beautiful the flowers are, there will always be a day when they fall. Yinger crouched on the ground, reaching out to stroke these already yellowed and withered flowers. If the young lady doesn't want the flower to wither, she can turn the most beautiful moment of this flower into an eternal flower, so that it can stay bright and eternal. The sudden voice frightened Yinger's body slightly. Who? You. You Changxing, what are you doing here? It scared me. I don't know when Yu Changxing appeared behind Yinger. I was on duty at night in the corridor today, but I happened to meet Miss, replied Yu Changming. The silver moonlight coated the two with a thin layer of brightness. Yinger looked at him, his eyes seemed a bit more determined, and he no longer spoke hesitantly. What about the immortal flower? It's just imprisoning the good flower in this world for people to enjoy. If so, it's better to wither. Yinger stood up and looked at him. The flowers bloom and fall from time to time, and the young lady doesn't need to feel sad about it. If it can't be changed, it's better to appreciate the beauty of the hanging flowers. Yu Changming responded softly. You don't seem like this rude servant, but you speak with some sense. Your tribute presentation is also very interesting, as if you have your own opinions on things. Yinger said with great interest. The young lady agreed to give the little slave a reward, and the little slave must have used all his might to please the young lady. As they spoke, the two suddenly looked at each other, their eyes colliding for a moment. Both of them felt a bit flustered in their hearts. Chapter 10. The Scenery of a Big Marriage. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The wind gradually rose in the courtyard, blowing up the petals of the hibiscus flowers that had not yet withered. All things remained silent, except for the cold and bright moon above. The two figures were particularly clear under the moonlight. If only I could go to the White Egret Island and have a look. Yinger said lightly. Miss, there seems to be some sadness in my words today, and the scene of falling flowers can't help but make people feel lonely. Yu Changming said with Yinger's words. Touching the scenery and feeling sad is just human nature. It's just the thought of being trapped in these four corners of the sky, wanting to fly but unable to fly. Miss, don't worry. What can we do if we can't fly out? Why don't we create a gust of wind ourselves, free and unrestrained? To be a fan of wind. The wind cannot be seen or touched, how can one be a fan of wind? He crouched on the ground, lovingly picking up the scattered petals. Hold the withered and yellow petals in front of your chest. Miss, look. Wind. The young man waved the falling flowers towards the sky, countless residual petals floating in the air, swaying with the ups and downs of the wind. In this moment, the wind took shape, the wind has taken a breath. As if the spirit of this world is flashing at this moment, the ups and downs of the wind are getting bigger and bigger. Yinger reached out to touch the presence of the wind. The girl's water-colored dress slowly swayed, soaking everything in the hazy moonlight. The hair on the young man's temples also brushed slightly. Miss, this is the wind, it's always there. Yu Changsheng, you're quite interesting. I really think you're amazing. More and more falling flowers are being swept up by the wind, scattering a shower of flowers. Petals gently caressed two people. Yu Changming's slightly arched back straightened slightly, and Yinger quietly raised her eyes. The starlit eyes seemed to contain a different kind of emotion, and their eyes met again, ripples layer by layer, unconsciously sinking. It's time to go back to my room. Night. It's getting late. Yes. I should also be on duty now. In the long corridor, candlelight flickers on both sides of the corridor, and the light is hazy, casting into this environment, everything is so hazy. The towering gate of the Prime Minister's mansion is covered in red silk and brocade, with red silk flowers hanging high on the eaves, corridors, and plum and osmanthus trees, creating a magnificent red scene. In the pear fragrance hall, everyone is happy and smiling. The servants were adorned with red ribbons around their waists. In the mandarin duck bronze mirror, Yuer's black hair was combed to the top of her head, and her strands of blue silk were coiled into a yang feng hairstyle. On both sides of her forehead were slanted jade dragon and phoenix hairpins, adorned with 6 phoenix beads swaying in long steps. The red agate was finely inlaid on top of the gold wire. Daimei lightly dyed, vermilion lips slightly dotted, the blush on both cheeks was lightly brushed open. A group of people moved to the main hall, and the king of Beiping was dressed in a bright red wedding dress, with a golden spider ribbon tied around him. His black hair was tied up with a gilded golden crown to secure it in place. There are numerous congratulatory gifts covered with bright red satin in the courtyard, luxurious and grand. At the beginning of the Jiuli ceremony, a good relationship was established. May we respect each other as guests and establish a prosperous future in Juho. With one heart and one mind, we should work together in a suitable way, and forever establish a harmonious relationship with Luan. After finishing her congratulatory speech, Yuer held a lotus-embroidered gold fan and half covered her face, following behind the king of Beiping and slowly walked out of the hall door. Sister. Yinger was stopped by the old grandmother as she was about to say something. Don't ask the queen to turn back, walk forward with the wind and scenery, and not turn back, said the grandmother, gripping Yinger's hand tightly. In the palace of the Prince of Beiping, there were many guests and friends, and even the Prince of Dongshu, who was in the fiefdom of Liangchuan, rarely returned to the capital. This grand wedding, prosperous times. You dog slaves dare to block my way. Mo Jin's face became gloomy. The prince instructed that the girl must not step out of the gate of the Shuahua courtyard today, said the gatekeeper mercilessly. Upon hearing these words, Mo Jin remained silent and turned around, frozen in place for a long time. I just want to go to the front hall to take a look, isn't it okay to just take a glance? Mo Jin said to Suyue beside her. Since the prince has given orders, he has his own reasons. It's better not to disobey the prince's orders. Suyu extended her hand to help Mo Jin. It's okay, you go down. I'm walking in this yard by myself, I won't go anywhere else. After speaking, tears slowly fell from the woman's delicate face. Prince, Mo Jin just wants to appear in front of people with integrity. Can't Mo Jin even get a title? Yuer sat upright on the wedding bed, with embroidered silk quilts covered with red dates, peanuts, longans, and lotus seeds. The bright red candlestick slowly burned, red candles shed tears. Yuer's head was covered with a red cloth, and her eyes were blurry. After an unknown amount of time, perhaps it had already passed the hour of high, and the door was finally pushed open. Yuer's heart pounded as the hazy figure before the meeting approached closer and closer. The covered red silk fabric was slowly lifted off. "Princess, very beautiful," said the king of Beiping as he looked at the radiant Yuer. Yuer shyly lowered her head and dared not speak. The man reached out his hand and lifted her chin, leaning straight towards her seductive little mouth. "Alas, prince, wait a moment, we haven't had a toast yet. This is a newlywed rule." Yuer supported the prince with her hand. "No problem, I don't care about such rules." The prince of Beiping grabbed Yuer's hand and she couldn't move. The prince's face in front of him blushed slightly, and his eyes were blurred. Waves of alcohol slowly dissipated. Yuer closed her eyes and remained silent. Candle shadows burn brightly, and neatly arranged toasters stand quietly on the table. The half-cooked dumplings, symbolizing extra life, have already been soaked in the shi pan, gradually filling up the clear soup. The filling inside the shi dumplings overflowed, and the originally clear soup slowly became cloudy and shiny.